Hello world, and welcome to another video. For this week I'll just have to start off by mentioning if you see some weird cuts or I make weird noises or something in between this video, I'm battling a little bit of pneumonia. Very slight, it's not bad enough hospital or anything, but it's enough to sometimes mess me up with breathing. But apart from that, doing well. I will be bringing an update video soon. I'm just waiting for some bone marrow results and then I'll be able to give an update how things are going. For the rest, this week's video I'm going to be talking about everything God has done, or some of the things God has done during the last few years with being sick. If you're a Christian, I hope this will be encouraging to you, to help you out. If you're not, I'd like to ask you to listen. At the very least, you'll have an idea of how we Christians think and approach things. So don't just click it away if you think, oh, Christian stuff. Do take time to try and understand how other people are as I tell you these things. I've brought it down to the five things which I think have impacted my life and Tessa's life the most over the last while, and I'd like to share these with you. The first thing I'd like to mention is one of the things that's really amazing is I know when you get sick, very often one of the hardest things to battle is everything that happens on the side of your life, and that would include things like on the financial level, because if you lose your job or if you end up, I mean, we at least do have a safety net in the Netherlands, but you do have less finances at that point, because you will, when you're on subsidy, you get less than a salary. It does make life challenging. But one of the things that's amazing is before I got sick is I signed an insurance, which is a very uncharacteristic thing for me to do. And what it does is when you end up being sick, they give you a very small sum of money, but it's to alleviate some of the deficit you get when you end up on subsidy because you're sick. So when I had been sick for 2 years and the leukemia came back and we ended up in a bit of a thingy that I was going to have to, lose the job, which is, so it makes sense. I mean, a company cannot pay for a sick person. That insurance kicked in and helped supplement some of our deficit. And also what's crazy is we found out that our pension also does that. So all of a sudden, what I was going to lose was very much minimalized. Not only that, but Tessa and I have, despite the fact that I'm sick, I think actually since I've been sick, we've saved better than we've been able to save ever before. One of the funny things is, especially in the last 1.5 years, God has blessed us financially very well. I mean, it's actually amazing to see how God has been with us and helped us on that and prepared us that for me being sick and being stuck at home, not being able to do anything, that we've actually, it's almost like we went financially forward by it, which under normal circumstances would make no sense. But it really has been an amazing thing to see how God takes care of his children, and that he knows what's going to happen in your life and then prepares you beforehand, and that really is amazing. And I'm really I'm thankful that he's been able to do that. We haven't had to worry about, oh no, how are we going to get through this month, how are we going to cope with this, oh, do we have to do this, because that's all been covered. It's all dealt with. God has provided, and that's really amazing to see. The next thing I want to mention is something that concerns Tessa. And when I was in remission, Tessa started a study because we thought, well, I'm okay now. And what's been amazing is that Tessa has been able to, even while I've been sick and been struggling, especially the last half year, she's been able to do a study. She had at times that she was falling behind and struggling, but yet every time she's had to do a report, or she's had to do a test or anything, she's managed to get through them and pass them. And it's actually been amazing to see that she's actually been able to cope, despite the fact that I've been in hospital and the transplant and all those things. And I do believe God's been helping her with that. she'll probably talk more about how that's going and what God's done there. But I think it's amazing. I think the fact that it's anyway amazing that she got a job at the hospital before I got sick, has been able to work there. It's also been able to, then the times I'm in hospital, she doesn't have to do difficult things to get to visit me because she's there anyway. And it's been really, in some ways, a blessing. And it's really great to see that she's been able to still grow at work and do a study on the side and get all those things done, despite the fact that she's been trying to also take care of me. So God's really been with her, helped her. She's grown as a person during this period as well, and it's really great to see. And that's just another way that God's been working. The next one I'm going to mention, this is the third on my list. This is where we get into some really amazing stuff. One of the things I have to mention is when I was diagnosed, I'm going to get a little technical, yeah. Usually your blood has to have certain levels to be okay, and one of the levels that they check is your blood platelets. That's how your blood clots when you bleed. That also stops you from bleeding internally and that sort of thing. And you've got to have a level of above 150 on the test. I believe it's 150, what's a million platelets per, they have a test. But you've got to have a certain amount of platelets measured above 150. Usually when you go under 40, they will actually not do certain operations or procedures on you because you won't clot and it will cause problems. And usually whenever I've been under 20, I've always gotten platelets. You get a transfusion because you're running low. Now the thing is, the day I was diagnosed, my platelet level was on 3. Actually, when your platelets go under 10, you can spontaneously bleed on the inside for no reason. Let alone the fact that if you were to bump into a table or stub your toe somewhere, you could actually die from it because there's no clotting agent in your blood anymore. And I was running level 3. I that day still rode to the hospital for a blood test, rode back home and got a phone call, had phone tested that she could come pick me up and drive me to the hospital. All that going on, blood platelet level 3. By all statistical probabilities, I should have died that day, but I didn't. And I see that as God's protection. That's the only way I can see it, is that God held everything together in my body so that I could survive the day, so that I could tell the story. And that to me is an amazing miracle. Purely based on my blood levels of the day, I should not have survived. I should not have made it to the hospital for the blood test, let alone go back later for the leukemia, to be diagnosed and to be admitted to hospital. So it's really, it's an amazing miracle of how God can protect and keep you going at those points in time. The next thing that I want to mention where we see God work is after I'd been stabilized and been pretty much okay for a few years, the leukemia came back, and that was 2019, April, May, about there. And it came back hard and aggressive. And I was actually admitted in hospital in that September because it had gotten so aggressive, they didn't know what to do, and we decided to take a very heavy chemo approach, and it didn't work. And we actually, we had that talk about sort of, what are we going to do now? We don't know. What do we try? And it was pretty clear that at that point, the doctors and Tess and I did not know what was going to happen, because it looked like there was no real possibility to come back from this. I was no longer in remission. My bone marrow was really messed up, and leukemia was aggressive, and it mutated aggressively. What they usually say was a bit, you have 3 to 6 months room. Nope, 3 months is my limit, and mutations again and that sort of thing. So we had actually a point where we said we did not know what was going to happen. I still remember that I've usually always been able to, then I look and I'm working out, how's God going to do the miracle now? I tend to do that. And that was the first point that I said, Lord, I don't know what you're going to do anymore. So I decided, it's about time we just leave it up to God. And at that point we thought there was, we didn't know what was going to happen. And I still remember we had some friends from Belgium come up to visit us. We prayed with them, talked with them, and at that point we didn't know what was going to happen. And then the doctors came with this idea, let's take one of the old medicines we'd been using, because apparently the mutation at that point well, it wasn't very sensitive, but it was kind of sensitive to the medication. So let's do a higher dose medicine, see what happens. And miracle upon miracle, I ended up in remission again. So much so that we immediately planned the transplant, which is why we did the transplant as quickly as we did. And with the fear that, would I be stable for 3 months to let this work? And again, a miracle upon miracle. I mean, I was stable for, I've been now stable for 3 months at this point. It's all worked. Everything's looking good. Like I say, next time I will give an update and tell you more about what's on that front. But I've survived the transplant. And one of the doctors I spoke recently, and we were sort of like, had to admit that if you'd come to us in September, we would not have expected to see me where I am today at this point, based purely on what we had seen in September and October. So it is actually an amazing miracle that happened here. And to me, that's another area where God worked. The last one I'm going to mention of how God worked, and this is something that I'm going to mention because a lot of people do say, wow, it's amazing that you and Tesra are going on and you're still fighting and you never gave up. And I'll tell you why we didn't do that. When I was diagnosed, we went to hospital that that afternoon, and it was hard and we didn't know what was going to happen. And at that moment in the hospital, the Holy Spirit said something to me. And for the people who don't understand how this works, when you have a relationship with God, you know when He speaks to you. I mean, and I'm not one of those people who has God speaking constantly the whole time, because I don't think He does. I mean, He gave us the Bible for a reason. That's where we get His word. But sometimes God will give you something personal. And in that hospital, we were there, and I know this was not me, because this is not my type of thinking. But something came to me, and the words were literally this: were, Gert, it is going to get hard, but you're going to make it. And so I told Tesra, I told my family, and I've told everyone who came across, that that's what God told me. And that has really helped Tesra and I keep going on. So when we had, for instance, an aggressive comeback, I held on to that promise because God said I'd make it. When we had moments that we didn't know what was going on, the hard times, when there's a lot of pain, when you're on all sorts of weird medications, when whatever was going on, the radiation, struggling with all the whatever went on, every time I always remember those words. It would be hard, which it was, but I would make it, and that's what God told me. And say what you want, those words carried me through. It's why when we in September thought, well, there's no way of getting back from this now, I said, no, there's got to be a way. God said there'd be a way. I don't know what it is, and then we rely on Him, and it's amazing to see. And that word carried Tessa and me through the whole thing. And hey, I'm here now. I can still tell you about all the things. I mean, I've got a playlist to my whole leukemia story, where you can see the ups and the downs and everything we've got through. And God pulled us through. He gave us what we needed to prepare us. He gave us what we needed as it started. He gave us the words we needed. He helped us to do everything else we had to do, kept me alive when it was necessary. And it's really been an amazing journey. I would not recommend it for anyone, of course, but it is amazing to see how God has has pulled me through and Tessa through, and what has happened, and how our lives have changed, and how we've gotten through through this all. And I guess I've spoken long enough now for this week, but I thank you for listening, and remember, whatever happens, God can get you through it. Trust Him, rely on Him, and believe His word. Whether you get a personal word or something out of the Bible, whatever, just believe His word, and whatever He says, He will do. Anyway, thanks for watching. Keep well, and God bless.